can't stop playing Pokemon Legends Arceus. And from what I'm seeing, many other Pokemon fans can't stop playing either. And I think I completely understand why this is. This is the Pokemon game experience many of us have been waiting a very long time for. It's the Pokemon game I've wanted since I first read about pocket monsters in the 98th issue of Nintendo Power magazine. That article was the first time I had ever even heard of Pokemon. And it was published well before the series made its debut in the West. So I spent my time dreaming about the game it was promising me was coming. A game where I could explore a world full of monsters and catch them all. Well, it's been 25 years since I read about Pokemon and was imagining what the game was going to be like. And I feel like the game I was dreaming about this whole time is finally here. And it's called Legends Arceus. While this game feels like an extremely overdue step for the Pokemon series to take, better late than never, right? Whether this game had come out 10 years ago or just 10 days ago, I'm enjoying it just the same. Even an explanation for why exactly it was called Pocket Monsters originally is here. They can shrink. If this style gameplay was overdue for the series, a clear explanation of exactly what was going on with the Pokemon going in the Pokeballs is very overdue. Punctuality of this kind of gameplay aside, I cannot stress enough how much fun it is being able to freely explore a living world full of Pokemon, strategizing a way to approach, battle, and capture them. For the first time I actually feel like I'm playing a game that represents the Pokemon world the way it's always been depicted in other media, like the anime series or manga. For years we've had to settle for many of the same tired gameplay mechanics that initially stemmed from simply being the limitations of trying to replicate this Pokemon world concept on a Game Boy system. But had this concept, the very idea for Pokemon, never happened back in 1996, and instead was thought up today, well, let's be honest, the way to simulate that concept in a video game would not be the way it's been done for the past 20 years. Instead, the idea of exploring a world full of monsters, with kids trying to sneak up and capture these creatures, would result in gameplay where you actually explore and sneak up to catch them. That's what Legends Arceus is finally delivering, and that's why it's truly something special. It's this style gameplay that's not only something Pokemon fans have wanted for so long, but it's also exactly what makes Legends Arceus incredibly fun and addictive. It's this gameplay that has me logged in at over 90 hours in my first week of playing it. And it's this gameplay that has me considering calling Legends Arceus the best Pokemon game ever made. It's a contender right now to dethrone Gold and Silver as my absolute favorite entry in the series. And I consider Gold and Silver to be when the series went from a great idea to a truly great video game. Now, I could go on and on about everything I like about this game. From the open world environments making me truly feel like I'm interacting with the Pokemon more than ever before, to not shying away from showing things like how Pokemon can actually attack humans. I'm not just happy to see that because it's a slightly more mature, dark, and edgy Pokemon game, but rather because it makes the entire idea of a world full of powerful monsters feel more real. This helps immerse me in the universe itself, and it follows its own logic. And I'm even really digging the character designs in this game, and the whole back-in-time, Meiji-era Hokkaido, Japan style setting. But I'm not going to spend this video just gushing about everything I like about the game. Honestly, it would probably take me way too long to do that. This isn't going to be a traditional game review, as I think a video like that would, again, just be really, really long. Instead, I'm going to list out the things I didn't like. Now, why would I do this for a game I'm claiming I really love? Well, there's a couple main reasons. First off, there's far fewer things I didn't like about this game, so it makes for a more manageable video to just highlight those. And two, because although I consider Legends Arceus to be a great game, it is far from a perfect game. So by criticizing and pointing out what shortcomings should be addressed, it's a good way to see where the series can still improve, and what it can improve upon for future Pokemon games. And three, the main reason I decided to focus on criticisms for this review is because all I hear anyone complaining about is the graphics. Basically, I hear two groups of people when Legends Arceus comes up in conversation. People who are loving the game and hailing it as the Pokemon game they've always wanted, and people complaining about the graphics, acting like this game is terrible because the graphics aren't high quality enough. Now, if all anyone complains about is the graphics, the only improvements we might see next time around are going to be improvements on the graphics. And frankly, since I'm loving the game, but it has its flaws, I'd like to see improvements elsewhere. Now, I do agree the graphics aren't the best. They aren't up to par with many other Switch games. There's pop-in, some of the textures aren't the best, and on occasion I've seen some stuff like the grass itself glitching out a bit. Some minor visual glitches, basically. What's going on with this rock right here? The third region, Cobalt Coastlands, is probably the biggest offender since it has a very large draw distance, thanks to being an open beach area, and the water could definitely look much better here. And I know how important the look of water can be for some gamers out there, but the gameplay of Legends Arceus is too good for the graphics to affect my experience very much. I'm in the camp that thinks the game looks fine, okay, good enough. The look of the game does not hinder my enjoyment of the game at all, and that's as good as I need graphics to be. If a game's concept is interesting, its art style is cool, and its gameplay is fun, then I'm happy. I've always thought the graphics of the GameCube era and forward looked good enough for me. Still to this day, I play old GameCube and PlayStation 2 games all the time. And while of course not as good looking as the games of today, that era of gaming's graphics certainly don't ruin the experience for me, especially when the gameplay is very, very good. Now, I do think some of the early N64 or PS1 games have become somewhat difficult to enjoy because the polygonal graphics are simply outdated. However, that said, my favorite game ever is actually Ocarina of Time, and it's got the polygon N64 graphics. So graphics can certainly be overcome with things like good game design, good gameplay, and a good concept and art style. And I think Legends Arceus has all of those. Going off of that Zelda analogy here, if I had never played The Wind Waker, but someone suggested it to me and said it was a great game, if I then decided to go ahead and give the game a try for the first time today, I'd enjoy the game just as much as I did when I first played it back when it released. Had Pokemon Legends Arceus been a GameCube game, one that I just somehow happened to never get around to playing, it slipped through my radar, and I went ahead and tried it for the first time in 2022, I'd be loving it just as much as I am with it releasing in 2022. So yes, I do agree the graphics aren't the best, but by all means, that doesn't mean this isn't a great game. Yes, the Pokemon Company is the biggest media franchise in the world, bigger than things like Marvel, Star Wars, and Harry Potter, so yes, they should probably be producing games with AAA graphics. And yes, this is probably a Pokemon game that we could have gotten on like the GameCube or at least the Wii, but regardless, the game is great, and I suspect it will go down as a classic, and probably be seen as a pivotal turning point for the Pokemon series. So if people want to criticize Legends Arceus, I'd rather hear actual criticism of the gameplay and game design itself, not just pointing out how the graphics could look better. Everyone knows the graphics aren't the best, but as I said, I play old games all the time and love them for the gameplay, and that's kind of what Pokemon Legends Arceus feels like to me, playing an old classic that's still great today. So I'd rather put out some honest game criticism here, and not just have the only complaint on the internet about this game be the graphics. Alright, so with that rather long introduction out of the way, and we'll talk about long intros in a bit, I've compiled 10 complaints, 10 categories of criticism about the game, and I'll go over each of them one by one and explain what I mean and what the criticism is. Just a quick warning, there may be some minor spoilers like seeing all the different regions in the game, so be warned. Alright, let's jump right in. I'll start off with the only complaint I've really heard anyone discussing outside of the graphics. Number 1, trainer battles. So in this game, there are very few trainer battles. Not even sure if most would be considered trainers in the traditional sense, but what I'm talking about is human opponent battles. Most of these style battles are tied to the main story of the game, and most of them are pretty easy. Also, most of the human characters you battle will only have a couple Pokemon to fight you with at most, while you'll likely have a full team of 6. While the alpha Pokemon battles can actually be pretty difficult, especially at the beginning of the game, since you can encounter alphas that are much higher level than you, and many of them tend to heal themselves. Plus, there are times when multiple wild Pokemon can gang up and attack you all at once, and you have to fight them with only one Pokemon at a time. I don't usually ever have all my Pokemon faint in past Pokemon games, but attempting to catch certain high-level alphas, or catching things in the time distortions where 3 aggroed Pokemon usually gang up on me, were actually pretty challenging. And I personally just tend to like when a game lets me attempt difficult things if I choose to do so, especially when open world games do this, since it allows both for freedom of exploration while still giving consequences for exploring outside of your current skill level. This game nails that in the wild encounters, but doesn't have it with the trainer battles. Now, easy trainer battles aren't anything new for the Pokemon games, but for once, it's actually not the quality of the battles I have an issue with here, as the alpha Pokemon work fine as the challenging battles in this game. My issue was the quantity. There just aren't very many trainer battles here. I completely understand why this is, as this is supposed to take place shortly after the concept of turning apricorns into Pokeballs was just recently invented. But still, despite the Pokeballs themselves being a new concept, people seem to have been raising Pokemon as companions for a long time, and battling Pokemon seems to be something people have been doing for a while as well. So having something other than just like the bandits and have some actual other trainers roaming the map looking for a fight would have been cool to see here. But this game offers very little of anything like that. Again, most of it is tied to the story itself. Now, the battle system I really like in this game, actually. Battles take place within the environment where the encounter happens, which makes this world feel much more immersive. It's much better than in past games where the combat takes place on some designated combat screen with just varying backgrounds to show where it's happening. And even being able to move around during combat is just neat and makes me feel like the trainer has agency living in a real world. Little things like having the trainer being able to be hit by the Pokemon attacks during combat is also just cool and again adds to the immersion. This game has that more than any other Pokemon game. And I also really like how seamless and quick battles happen, jumping right in and out again afterwards. No more sitting through line after line of the same classic text boxes about a wild Pokemon appearing, or your own Pokemon leveling up or learning a new move. Though I will say you can sometimes forget a Pokemon that you have has learned a new move or is ready to evolve if you didn't notice all the prompts and information happening on the left side of the screen at the end of a battle, as those go away pretty fast after a fight. Though again, I prefer this quick, seamless transition in and out of battles, so it's worth it to have to occasionally check your team on your own time to see how much they've actually grown if you haven't been paying close attention. I said before how battles in Pokemon games are generally pretty easy. In the older Pokemon games, only in the post-game content did they ever throw anything close to a challenge at you for the most part, whereas here, an Alpha Pokemon can be encountered in the first few minutes of the game. So although this isn't a trainer battle, again, I prefer having a challenge in the early game. As for the new combat system, having Pokemon master their moves over time, allowing them to perform moves that are either in the agile or strong style, really adds a very interesting element to the turn-based combat system. A huge part of Pokemon battling in the games has always been who gets initiative. Swapping out for a more preferable type advantage generally would cost you a turn, and was a huge part of the decision process in competitive battles, who was going to go next. Here, the agile and strong attacks gain or lose you some turns to attack or swap out a Pokemon, or use an item, or in the case of wild Pokemon encounters, throw a Pokeball. This whole system works great and feels especially tailor-made for wild Pokemon encounters, which are the bulk of the game's battles. Since part of the encounter will involve trying to sneak up to initiate the combat from behind to win that first move. Also, the agile attacks being weaker and the stronger attacks, obviously being stronger, work well here, since this is a game that involves you completing the Pokedex both from catching and defeating Pokemon. Having both of those attack style options can be useful mattering to what you're attempting to gain from that Pokemon encounter, either trying to catch it, which might involve trying to keep it alive and not hitting it too hard, or trying to defeat it, which might involve trying to hit it very hard. And there's tons of other little quality of life improvements to the battling, or being able to purchase every Pokemon's attacks from one place. It's all just a much better system than having to think hard about wasting a TM or not on a Pokemon, or where you have to find or buy the TM, or having to breed for a certain egg move, or going well out of your way to just have your Pokemon remember an old move. There's no more worry about them learning a new move and having to forget an old one and what that might mean when you're trying to create the Pokemon you want to battle with later. And IVs are totally gone here, so you don't have to worry about that at all. All of that stuff was tedious and honestly discouraged me from using a Pokemon I got attached to in favor of some Pokemon I simply bred for battling instead. Letting people grow attached to their Pokemon and encouraging them to use that Pokemon should always be the intention of how these systems are designed. Here, really the only difference and reason you might want to catch a specific Pokemon is either to get one that's shiny or to have the correct nature for battling. But beyond that, you can use the Pokemon you became attached to over any other one. So why am I talking about all this stuff in my supposed complaint or criticism about trainer battling? Well, because there is no battling with other real-life trainers in this game. There's no online player versus player battles, or for that matter, in-person player versus player battles. Since this game has me growing really attached to my team, plus they've streamlined some of the more difficult, tedious aspects of getting into competitive battling, not to mention simply reigniting my love for the Pokemon series in general, it's a real shame I can't battle my friends right now, or get into the competitive scene for Legends Arceus at all. As for right now, there simply can't be one. The whole point of catching the Pokemon and leveling them up is to eventually build a team to battle with. And if the game doesn't have very many trainer battles, I could actually forgive that so long as I can battle my friends, but that isn't here. And having PvP also gives the game essentially infinite post-game content. But without PvP, the post-game relies entirely on what's within the game itself. And you can exhaust most of that by the end of the game, at least beyond the just tedious tasks. Why should I spend any time building a really great team once I've finished the whole game? Which requires me to catch them all, when the bulk of what you can do with the team is just go out and battle in-game wild Pokemon that you far outclass by that point. This kind of reminds me of one of the most unfortunate aspects of Pokemon Go. I recall how exciting it was when everyone was playing it back in the summer of 2016, but it seemed like everyone was waiting for them to quickly add in trading and battling other players. During those first few months when I was encountering tons and tons of real people playing the game out in the real world, it would have been great to be able to trade and battle with them. I think everyone was simply waiting for that. But it just took way too long for Pokemon Go to add that style interaction to the game itself. All the early real-life interaction in Pokemon Go took place in person, and it was just helping other people to find and catch the Pokemon that were in the area. Sure, I agree that catching should be the bulk of Pokemon gameplay and the focus, which Legends Arceus and Pokemon Go both did very well. However, the end goal of trading and collecting should be to build a team to battle your friends with. Don't cut that short. Since without having that ultimate end goal, something to strive for, a reason to be the very best, like no one ever was, then the drive and desire to keep playing can fall off rather quickly. Trading does still exist in this game, so connecting between games is there, but there's simply no battling. I'm unsure if the agile and strong style attacks, or having both trainers being able to move around freely during a battle, was the issue with adding PvP and why they didn't implement it here. But whatever the case is that they decided to cut it, it's probably my number one hope for DLC for this game. Add a battle arena area. Have the players stationary during the battles if you have to, since maybe moving around freely had to be cut. It doesn't work when you do two people actually battling each other. Or keep them on opposite ends of the arena somehow so they can move around but only on their side during battle. And if they have to cut out the mastered moves thing, the whole agile and strong attack system, since maybe swapping the turn-taking initiative around between two player characters would be a bit wonky, they could simply say that using such mastered techniques isn't allowed in the arena zone or whatever. If that's the problem, I don't mind cutting it in favor of at least having some kind of PvP in this game. If somehow battling your friends isn't added with DLC, I hope there's some way to battle with the Pokemon from Legends Arceus. Maybe they're making some kind of modern Pokemon Stadium game, and I'll be able to use Pokemon Home to transfer my Legends Arceus team to a Pokemon game that has a battle arena where I can fight my friends. Though I'd much prefer simply adding battling as DLC to Legends Arceus itself. I think that would be a better option than having to buy a whole different game and locking anyone out of participating in PvP in Legends Arceus if they don't have a Pokemon Home subscription to transfer their Legend Arceus Pokemon over to some new Pokemon Stadium type game. It just seems like adding it as DLC would be much simpler and a better price point for anyone hoping to battle within Legends Arceus. My hope is that, best case scenario, DLC will bring in PvP battling and maybe even some more trainer battles. If not there, then hopefully at least somewhere like a Pokemon Stadium equivalent game where I can move my Pokemon Arceus Pokemon to home and then to the Stadium game to battle my friends with them. And if we don't get PvP implemented, I really hope at least the game adds some more trainer battles with DLC or something. Trainer battles should really be the main gimmick or focus of whatever the sequel to Legends Arceus is. If Legends Arceus is when the Pokeballs are first invented, have the sequel be wherever the first Pokemon League was formed. Have it tell the story of the beginning of the gym system, the Pokemon League, and have more trainer battles. Still have all the open environment exploring and wild Pokemon encounters the way this game did it, as it's perfect here, and maybe you could even implement something like you have to collect a certain amount of a certain type of Pokemon before the gym can be opened in that type. You could have it be, again, when the gym system, the Pokemon League, was first forming, and maybe your player character has to help create this whole Pokemon League, and then the end game could be going around to each gym and fighting the league at the end. Either way, I think the obvious next step is to add back in more trainer battles, since this game already nailed the catching wild Pokemon aspect of Pokemon perfectly. Now this is an open world exploring catching themed game, so I get why trainer battles weren't the focus here and we only got a minimum amount in kind of the story content. So let's talk about a complaint that actually does have to do with this being an open world style game. So my number 2 criticism, the map. I think this is the first time I've played a game where the focus of the game is around exploring a big open map and there is no mini-map. There isn't even a compass, at least to let me know what direction I'm facing. I have to pause the game to see where I'm at, see where I'm facing, and unpause to try and remember which direction I'm headed all the time. This is such an odd oversight, as a tiny map on the game's HUD should probably be the norm for open world games at this point. And I would have thought it would have been here, but it isn't. It's not too bad once you get to know the regions, but it's so weird it isn't here. Maybe they figured having a mini-map all the time would get in the way of the feeling of immersion, like you're actually out in the wild exploring. But even having access to the Arc phone and a map at all kind of goes against that design philosophy, so I don't think that's the reason it isn't here. Also, this game has certain Pokemon during certain times of the day, so a map, a compass, and a day and night icon all should have probably been on the HUD. Instead, I have to pause to the map screen for the Arc phone to get any of that information. The game also basically has 3 different pause screens, one of which is the Arc phone and the map, another one is the Pokedex, and then there's the actual, pause screen where your items, Pokemon, and you can save the game and stuff is. Just feels like a little overkill in my opinion. I guess being able to go straight to the map is nice instead of having to flip through different menus in one pause screen, but still, it's just a little much to have 3 different pause screens and remember which is each until you get used to it. Now, maybe they figured there was already too much going on the screen and they didn't want to make the HUD too invasive, which makes some sense since we're hunting and catching these creatures. We do need to be able to see the world around us, even if people are complaining about the graphics. But you can choose to make the HUD toggleable in settings, so not sure why having a mini-map and having it be toggleable wasn't included here. A mini-map, a compass, letting us know exactly when it turns between day and night, and having all of that just toggle on and off on the HUD screen would have been really helpful. The biggest issue here isn't so much I have to pause to see the map itself, it's that it's very easy to forget which direction I'm facing, and I have to pause again to kind of readjust. Now, not exactly a criticism or complaint about the map itself, but it does involve the map screen, is that every time you exit a region, you have to return to Jubilife Village each time. You can't exit a region back to the map screen and then choose to go immediately to another region. So it's always exit out of the region you're in, load up Jubilife, turn around, load back to the map screen, pick a different region. I suppose you could argue leaving a region to see the map and then having to select Jubilife would get annoying as well, as you do often want to return to Jubilife before going somewhere else. But I think having to constantly go to Jubilife every time you want to change to another area is worse than just having to select it on the map screen each time. And they, of course, could have given you the option right from exiting a region to either return to Jubilife or select a different region. One option could return you right to Jubilife, like the game already does, and the other could put you on the map select screen so that you can go from region to region. Maybe because of some specific part of the storyline, they wanted you to always have to go back to Jubilife without being able to go somewhere else, as it would have screwed up something with the plot or something. I don't recall the story well enough to know if there was ever a time the plot would have absolutely required locking you into going back to Jubilife. But even if it did, they could have simply locked out the select a different region option during that part of the game and that part of the storyline or something, and still given us the option to go back to the map screen otherwise. Now, one other issue I have with the map bleeds into my third complaint with the game. Some of the button choices, like the button mapping, the button configuration in this game, are not intuitive at all. So number 3, button configuration, layout, button mapping, whatever you want to call it. A lot of them feel very off. You might say I just gotta press the correct buttons, so this is a dumb thing to complain about, but let me explain. Because legitimately there's some very weird choices going on here. Let's go back to talking about the map screen for a second. So the map button is the minus button. So you press the minus button, pulls up the map, you see where you are, what direction you're facing, so you go to exit the map screen, and I tend to hit the minus button again, as it feels like a pause button. And instead of unpausing the Arc phone map screen, it zooms out. You can already zoom here with the ZL and ZR trigger buttons. So having minus and plus also be mapped to zoom as well is once again kind of overkill. We don't need it, we have buttons for that. Buttons that feel much more naturally like a zoom in and out button, the ZL and ZR buttons. Now, like I said, there are 3 pause screens: the Arc phone map, Pokemon and items, and the Pokedex. The other screens don't exit out when you repress the button you selected them with either. However, there's a good reason for this. They are mapped to the up and down buttons on the D-pad. So while you're looking through your items or looking through your Pokedex, you might be using the D-pad to move around through those menus. Okay, so it makes sense there to instead use the B button to exit out and not repress the button you used to get to that screen. However, when it comes to the Arc Phone map screen, there's really no reason the minus and plus buttons have to be zoom buttons. The minus button could have made for a very natural unpause the map screen button. And even more confusing, the plus button is to ride a Pokemon. Okay, so obviously it's the right side of the controller equivalent to the minus button, right? Well, guess what happens if I press the plus button again? It deselects the riding Pokemon. So not having minus unselect the map feels especially jarring here. Okay, so moving on to more odd button options. Why isn't the B button used to unselect the riding Pokemon? Well, they made it the run button while riding, or at least the go faster button for Weirdeer and Basculegion. Okay, fine, I prefer the plus button being both select and riding Pokemon and deselecting them. However, using the B button for going faster is a bit of an odd choice as well. See, when you aren't on a riding Pokemon, the B button is crouch. Run is mapped to pressing down on the left joystick. So early on in the game, before I got used to this, I'd often be panicking because a Pokemon started attacking me or something. I'd go to make my human player character run, and I'd end up pressing the B button, thinking it's going to be run since it's run while I was riding on Weirdeer. This, of course, would make my character crouch instead of run, and continue to be pummeled by some angry Pokemon. Why wasn't Go Faster on Weirdeer and Basculegion and the riding Pokemon pressing down on the left stick? I have no idea why they chose to do this. Or even better yet, why wasn't crouch toggling between pressing down on the left stick button and B used for running for everything, your player character and the riding Pokemon? At least pressing Y on some of the riding Pokemon is to jump, as Weirdeer and Basculegion, and dive as Braviary. And that feels like the equivalent of the human character's dodge roll, which is also mapped to Y, so those make sense. However, Sneasler has its own issue. So when you go up to a steep slope or climbable surface, an icon appears informing you to press A to call Sneasler to climb. Okay, cool, a shortcut instead of constantly having to toggle to Sneasler. And it's similar to calling Basculegion in the water, or Braviary as you're falling in the air. For all of those, it's a simple press of the A button when we're in the right environment to use that Pokemon, so there's some consistency here. However, when you're riding on Sneasler and not just the player character, this changes from the A button to the Y button, and it's for both ascending and descending cliffs. Meanwhile, A isn't mapped to anything except picking up items, which it's still mapped to when you're on a climbable surface as the player character and can call Sneasler. Okay, so whatever. If I'm on the edge of a cliff, I press Y to descend while I have Sneasler activated. Well, if Sneasler isn't activated and I'm the player character and I go over to the edge of a cliff, the icon says press A for Sneasler, the same as when I'm on a steep slope. Why is this a problem? Well, even worse than sometimes accidentally pressing the B button and crouching when a wild Pokemon is attacking me when I meant to run because I'm used to pressing the B button while on a riding Pokemon, sometimes I'm on the edge of a cliff and the Sneasler icon appears, saying it's prompting me to press A to call Sneasler. But I'm so used to climbing around as Sneasler and getting prompted to press Y instead on the edge of cliffs, I hit the Y button. And guess what happens? I dodge roll and dive off the cliff, to my death. And no, the game doesn't let you remap the button layout. I've tried. Quick helpful tip though, if you don't already have Sneasler and you're having trouble walking up a steep slope, just hold the ZR throw Pokeball trigger and you'll be able to run right up. Okay, so a more minor button placement complaint that doesn't usually get me killed is going first person mode and targeting the Pokemon to check its Pokedex stats, like its research points, are the same ZL trigger button. And if I'm not close enough to the Pokemon that I'm trying to quickly check its Pokedex research status for, I'll instead go first person mode, and that's a little awkward and screws me up while I'm trying to sneakily approach the Pokemon. I can't really complain about Pokemon and Pokeball being the same ZR toss button, because I actually love it and it feels so natural. But yes, I have screwed that up every now and then, especially in the early game, because I forgot to switch back between the items and Pokeballs to the Pokemon that I have on my team itself. But hey, at least the game actually warns you about that one. And again, it feels so natural to always throw with the same button, I really like it actually. While sometimes causing me to lose a few Pokeballs here and there, it is in fact very intuitive once you get used to it. Alright, moving on. Criticism number 4. Shopping. Specifically, the clothing shop. Oh god, the clothing shop. Call it nitpicking, as it isn't a major part of the gameplay, but I find it so frustrating I had to include it on here. Okay, so pretty much everything about this system I do not like. First off, the menu categories are huge. They're gigantic. I like to have lots of clothing options to customize my character, but it becomes nearly unmanageable later in the game when you have lots and lots of outfits unlocked. You wind up scrolling for a long time through lots of the same clothing, simply in different colors. I'm not sure why each of these pieces of clothing couldn't have just taken up one spot, and when you selected them, you went to a sub-menu and chose which color you wanted to buy, or something like that, but that would have saved a lot of scrolling time. As it is, you have to scroll through so much. Also, the scrolling is really sensitive, so you often skip over something. But with menus this huge, I guess scrolling has to be fast, right? Well, you might think scrolling through this huge, gigantic list of outfits quickly shouldn't be a problem once you've seen most of them. Since after seeing most of them, you'd probably just want to scroll past the ones you've already decided you don't really like and check out whatever's new. Well, you'd be right, except although the clothing shop does tell you when there's something new in stock, nothing indicates what specific items are actually new. So you have to comb through all of it every time. Remember what you've already seen and sort of guess at what looks like is probably the new item. You can't remember it. You think that's probably the new one. Could it easily just had an icon next to the new stuff the first time you looked at it? Or even an option to just see real quick what the new items are? So often I go to the shop, she tells me there's some new item, I go to look for them, and I have to scroll through everything, slowly, individually, to find out what exactly is new. And I'm sort of guessing at it. Oftentimes, at first, I'm excited that something new is here, and I end up giving up looking for it when I can't remember what I've already seen, and I don't feel like scrolling through every single list of clothing. And remember, the scrolling is very sensitive, so you want to go slow, and you want to see each and every item to figure out what's actually been newly added. The other really annoying thing is that you can't actually see how items you haven't bought yet go together. You can only see the items you haven't bought yet individually matched with whatever clothing your character has on. So for example, if I find a shirt that looks really cool, but I want to know if it looks cool with some pants I haven't yet bought, I have to purchase one of those and wear it to go see what the other one looks like with it. If this was real life, I could just try on two items at the same time, but apparently not here. It's like it's encouraging me to have to spend money to have to check what the items look like together. But this is fake in-game Pokemon currency. This isn't like a microtransaction game where forcing me to buy something to check them out together would actually be something the game designers want me to do. So why I can't select a few different things at the same time, try out full outfits, and then decide to buy them, I have no idea. Maybe to discourage anyone from accidentally buying multiple items at once, or they just didn't feel like programming a way to buy multiple things at once. I don't know, but it's very annoying. Also, even changing into clothing I already own is a whole separate screen. So even trying something new with the things I do have, I have to first see that she has something new in the shop, spend 5 hours scrolling through everything to find it, then either purchase it to try it with the stuff I already own, or exit back out, choose to change my outfit, find something I've already bought that I think might go with it, put that piece of clothing on, then exit out of changing, go back into the shop to buy things, find the item I wanted to buy again in the giant lists, and see how it looks with whatever I'm now wearing. And if it doesn't look great and I had something else in mind, then I have to do it all over again. It's a giant hassle, and I see no reason this all couldn't have been way simpler. Also, getting your haircut in this game costs $500 up front, just to see the hairstyles. Not sure why you can't look at the hairstyles and then pay for it afterwards. $500 isn't too much, and I recall it being this way in past Pokemon games too when you wanted to change your hair, but I do think it's kind of dumb. Character customization is just a fun extra thing to have in these games. It shouldn't have you jumping over hurdles, spending extra in-game money, just to see what your character can look like. You should just be able to test everything out, find something you like, and then buy it. So speaking of annoying menus, that brings us to number 5, The Pasture. The boxes / pasture in this game doesn't have an option to easily sort the Pokemon. And in a game where you're constantly catching so many doubles to complete the Pokedex research tasks, then choosing which Pokemon you've caught you actually want to release could have been helped a lot with a simple organization option. It really should be here. Pokemon Go had a simple, easy way to sort your caught Pokemon, and it was because you were going to have to transfer a lot of them the way the game plays. You were catching tons of Pokemon, you weren't going to keep them all. This game certainly has a bit of that going going on like Pokemon Go did, as when you release a Pokemon, you get grit for transferring here. So they knew catching multiples and releasing them was something everyone would be doing. Now you can search for Pokemon, but it only kind of works for checking the stats against each other and choosing which ones you want to release. You can see specific ones highlighted when you search, but still that's a lot of moving around the different boxes and having to switch back and forth to compare the stats and stuff. Would have been nice to search a species and then have some separate screen that just shows all of that species that I've caught, and I could easily compare them against each other and choose which one to release. So instead, since I wanted my boxes organized that way, I have to sort it all myself. And I have to keep up with this, sorting them constantly so I can easily choose which ones I want to release. But that requires keeping box 1 clear and some constant maintenance. Every time I'm done catching stuff, I have to go look at the pasture, move things around to keep things nice and organized for when I want to check my Pokemon and start releasing some. Just seems like a quick, easy option to see all the Pokemon right next to each other of a certain species should have been included here. Not exactly a part of the pasture, but I imagine it could have been here had the game had it. Breeding, well, I said was kind of annoying in past games due to it being such a big part of getting competitive Pokemon, and generally it ended up involving a lot of just riding your bike back and forth until the egg hatched. It still would have been a nice thing to have in this game in some form. Hatched from an egg could have been a Pokedex research task for some Pokemon. I'm unsure if the lore for Pokemon might be that eggs were not discovered yet at this point, which is honestly really weird. But much like I said earlier, how this game doesn't shy away from the fact that humans can be attacked by Pokemon, or even implied they are able to be killed by Pokemon in this game, having breeding would add to the world's immersion and make the Pokemon universe feel more real, or at least follow some real enough logic that it follows within its own world. Pokemon come from eggs, so having breeding helps with that immersion since we can get those eggs in the game. It was implemented as an annoying part of gameplay in the past, but having it in some form here would help to make the Pokemon feel like real creatures. And I definitely think making the Pokemon feel real should likely always be the top priority. Now at this point, I've watched 4 separate people start and play the beginning of this game, including myself, so I have to mention this next complaint or criticism. The intro or the tutorial for this game is way too long. There is a very slow start with the intro and tutorial for the game. But I do get it. It's a completely new, different gameplay style than past Pokemon games, so it takes some time to explain everything. Plus, the storyline going back in time and explaining this era, this world of Pokemon, is a little different than the one everyone's used to. However, Breath of the Wild, the game that this one gets compared to a lot, people are describing this as, it's Pokemon, but Breath of the Wild Pokemon. Well, Breath of the Wild has one of the best tutorials and intros to a game ever, because it just drops you in and it teaches you the gameplay by having you figure things out on your own through the environment itself. Legends Arceus, while similarly focused on exploring an environment, the tutorial is the total opposite. It explains everything very slowly and has tons of cutscenes at the start of the game. I don't know if having you just fall from the sky and find some Pokeballs and explore some tutorial area openly would have taught people the new gameplay or not, and I know Pokemon is generally targeted to a younger demographic than the Zelda series, so some handholding is probably necessary here, but either way, everyone I know who's played this game has complained the tutorial is too long. Admittedly though, everyone I know who played it is also older and a longtime Pokemon fan already, so I can't speak for how necessary this long introduction and tutorial was for younger players just starting to get to know the Pokemon world for the first time. But since I've seen the game started up 4 times now, everyone seems to be really bored the first hour or so, and then if they give it 2 or 3 hours, they're absolutely hooked and think it's the most fun game ever. But that first hour after I've told them, oh, you gotta play this game, it's amazing, and then they play it and they're really bored, they're like, are you serious? This is fun? Because it's going so slow. And that's a little unfortunate. So advice out there for anyone who hasn't picked up this game, give it a good hour or so before you actually judge it, because it gets good once you get actually playing. So although I completely understand it's very helpful to learn everything new about this game and do it slowly over that first hour or so you're playing so that you get the hang of what this game's about and used to the routine they want you to start following, they still could have cut down a little bit on some of the potato mochi talk or something and made the beginning a bit quicker. Now, despite the intro being really long, there's actually one very important aspect of the game they don't seem to explain very well: the Pokedex research point system. So number 7, the research point system. This is definitely just a minor criticism, but I feel I need to mention it. The Pokedex point explanation is confusing. I know this because everyone I've seen play this game was confused by it at first, including myself. Once you get it, it makes sense and it's totally fine and it's not a complaint about the game at all. But since everyone I know was confused by this at first, I can't overlook it as a criticism when I instead had to read about potato mochi instead of like a clear explanation for the Pokedex. Basically, I think the issue is the blank research task squares versus the red double arrow ones over on the far left. The research tasks in the rows with the red double arrows are worth 2 research points. The blank rows are worth 1 research point. Why they used blank and a weird double red arrow symbol instead of something like 1 research point and 2 research points, I don't know. It would have been way simpler to understand and straightforward showing the point totals over there instead of just these icons or not an icon. I've also seen some people a bit confused about updating the Pokedex. Basically that the Pokemon icons stay black and white even if you have already caught them. And the research points don't add up until you actually talk to the professor. Again, it makes sense once you get the hang of it, but with the blank squares versus red double arrow squares already being confusing, not being able to see the point totals adding up immediately as you do the research tasks can make it really tough to figure out what is actually going on for some. Also, because the amount of times you need to do certain tasks is not simply always being doing the task once, doing it twice, doing it 3 times, but actually being different amounts of times can confuse people as well to figuring out how this is all adding up. Like you might get a point towards your Pokemon getting its research level up to 10 the first time you catch something, but not the second time you catch it because the task is actually to catch 3. Again, it's just not obvious at first for a lot of people. And because of this point system having all of these different facets to it, the red arrows, the not red arrows, having to do things multiple times to get a point, having to get to 10 and not fill out the whole thing, and it not being really updated until you talk to the professor, if you miss out on understanding just one of those things, it can make the whole thing hard to make any sense out of. I've seen people not really realize that they need to get to 10 research points to truly complete a Pokemon in the Pokedex. And at a glance, even when they do know that, it might look like you have to do much more to complete that Pokemon's full page than what you actually have to do. Just get to 10. A lot of different things about this can throw some people off from understanding what completing the Pokedex is all about at first. I don't know if there was really a way around it, but at a glance, completing the Pokemon's Pokedex entry does look like a daunting task, when it's actually just about getting to 10 points. But that, of course, requires understanding the blank square versus the double arrow square, and it seems to get everyone a little tripped up the first time they're playing the game. Once again, I actually think it's a good system, it does make sense, it's just not conveyed very straightforward. Most people seem to stumble around a bit trying to figure it out, but they do eventually figure it out on their own. But for a game that has such a long intro and has so much text at the beginning, you'd think they would have been able to convey this better at some point during that long tutorial. Also, extremely minor complaint, but while we're on the subject of the Pokedex, if you have a Pokemon and you send it into battle to use one of its moves because you need to see it perform said move in order to get some research points, then the other Pokemon that you're attacking actually avoids the attack, it doesn't count as your Pokemon doing the attack. This is supposed to be research, right? I'd still actually see the Pokemon perform the move, and I should be able to count that towards my Pokedex. I guess I have to actually see the damage the move does too. Oh well, extremely minor complaint. I just think it's a little weird. Alright, the next criticism here is half criticism, half honestly a lot of praise for this game, really. As Legends Arceus has been a phenomenal step in the right direction for the Pokemon series as far as this criticism goes, but it still certainly needs to go further. Number 8, Pokemon interactions. Now let me first just say I love the fact this game encourages you to interact so much with each and every Pokemon. That is so key for this series. Seeing them all animated, living in an open world environment has me appreciating Pokemon I never thought twice about before. In older Pokemon games, I'd already determined if I liked a Pokemon or not based on its design, really. I'd see the ones whose designs I didn't care for much briefly during maybe a few encounters while walking through like the tall grass or a cave or surfing on the water or whatever, and just run from the battle. Or maybe a trainer would have them and I'd have to battle 1 or 2. But again, very briefly in my playthrough of a game. If I didn't like the Pokemon to begin with, I probably would never bother catching them unless I wanted to complete a living Pokedex. And even then, I'd just walk around tall grass, wait for a single random encounter with that Pokemon, catch it, and put it in the box and forget about it. If I didn't like the design of a Pokemon initially, there was very little hope I would eventually like that Pokemon. But here in this game, I'm interacting so much with every Pokemon in the game. Seeing a bit of the personalities of these Pokemon, seeing which Pokemon like run from me and which ones try to attack me, having to throw out berries and other food to try and distract them, and just really exploring the biomes that they live in. So I'm actually viewing them in their own environments, and having plenty of unique moments and encounters with each and every one of them as I explore the same living world that they do, either on purpose or by accident. Whether I'm out in the field completing research tasks to finish the Pokedex for them, or I'm just running around the world and existing alongside them, I'm getting to know and appreciate every Pokemon in this game. Before, you'd have to watch the anime or read about the particular Pokemon in some separate Pokemon material to truly learn what they're all like. Once I've caught some of them, I find myself trying out Pokemon I never thought I would, simply because the interactions I have with them in the overworld were kind of fun. And then having them on my team, they end up battling for me and stuff, and I appreciate them. And then I can even have them come out of their Pokeballs, and sometimes they come out like asleep or doing some cool animation, and that makes the Pokemon grow on me. Maybe I had to use a particular type of Pokemon, and I only had ones that I didn't care for too much, so I put them on my team, and they helped me fight an Alpha Pokemon, and they took it down, or they helped me catch it. That can make me feel really attached to many of the Pokemon I've caught. And I cannot stress enough how important that element is for the Pokemon series. Get people to actually like the Pokemon. And in my opinion, Legends Arceus accomplishes this task better than any previous Pokemon game. So I give it tons of praise animating the Pokemon and having them exist in this living world the way that they do in this game. However, it could be better. Many of the interactions seem more coincidental rather than something that's actually like programmed into the game for the Pokemon to do. For instance, I saw a shiny Bunnery, and it jumped into a tree. I thought it ran away, and I briefly panicked, only to sneak over and see it was sitting in the tree, hiding from me up on a branch. I didn't even know the Pokemon could jump onto the tree branches at that point in the game. It was the first time I'd seen it happen. That is the kind of unique experience Pokemon needs to have. I'll never forget that. And it made catching that particular Pokemon even more special than how it used to feel when you finally encountered a shiny Pokemon. Shiny Pokemon were this unique special experience. But in Legends Arceus, even normal Pokemon might have a special catching experience attached to them, or a special battle experience, or anything. You have experiences and they're unique to this game because it's so animated. The shiny Bunnery encounter was unique at first simply because it was shiny, and then the encounter itself became really unique because it was the first time I saw one jump into a tree. However, I don't think Bunnery was actually programmed to hide in the tree for me like that. Even being on the branch was probably just coincidental, and rather it was just where the Pokemon happened to fall onto in the environment when it did its usual hopping animation. It was still a cool encounter though, whether or not something like that was intentionally programmed in, or a happy accident with the way the game itself is just programmed in general. So yes, these cool unique encounters are the result of the way the game is programmed, to have Pokemon run around and do stuff in the world, but likely not really specific interactions like jumping into trees to avoid trainers. So while this game is definitely a step in the right direction, I don't think it's quite where it needs to be yet. Similar to what people are saying about the graphics for this game, the Pokemon interactions are totally passable here for the first time, but not quite up to par with what we'd expect from most modern games these days, or what a Pokemon game could actually be like. Next time they make another Legends Arceus style game, they really should program the Pokemon to do the sorts of things that they do in games like, say, Pokemon Snap. Have the Pokemon really interacting with the environment and the trainers in lots of different ways. This is more important than just about anything else in order to make the world feel more immersive and the Pokemon feel more alive. And Legends Arceus is certainly going in that direction. Making the Pokemon themselves feel like real creatures should always be the focus when making a Pokemon game. It's just that important. In summary, a bit more interaction with the environment from the Pokemon, but overall they are animated and doing stuff here and it feels like I'm in a living world, unlike how it felt in the wild area in Sword and Shield. So I do love that these animations and these interactions are here at all, and it's where the series should be headed. It's this element that makes Legends Arceus the Pokemon game and the Pokemon game experience everyone's been waiting for. But it could be better, so let's hope they stay the course on this one. Again, I'm hopeful next time we'll get something even closer to Pokemon Snap with the interactions in the future. That would be great to see with this style gameplay. Also, just while we're on the subject of interacting with the Pokemon in this game, rideable Pokemon are of course this game's answer to locking you out of environmental obstacles, basically taking a page from Pokemon Sun and Moon here. They are a much better option than the old HMs were in the older Pokemon games, but I'm still not too into the rideable Pokemon. I'd much rather use the Pokemon I've actually caught to ride and get over obstacles. This is sort of an immersion thing again, and I think being able to summon and ride, say, any water Pokemon I've caught or any flying Pokemon I've caught and use them to get around would be a lot cooler than a specific Pokemon that I can summon. Basically, it would have been nice to have many potential riding Pokemon, and all we earned was something like a saddle and a whistle, and then the game lets you swap around between the eligible Pokemon that you've caught that can use that saddle and whistle to summon them. Pokemon that fit for the different categories, like Pokemon you can ride to run fast, Pokemon you can ride to climb up mountains, Pokemon you can ride to go swimming, Pokemon you can ride to fly around, all that stuff. Obviously, they could limit which Pokemon are eligible and which Pokemon they'd have to animate for this, and you can swap around between, the swimming options or the flying options. So if you have a Pokemon you're using for swimming at one point and you catch a better one, you can just move the saddle to that Pokemon and that's the one you're summoning now. Again, I think this would just help with immersion, and I really like customization in games, and it's always been cool to have a team of Pokemon that's your very own, so if I'm riding around on certain Pokemon, it would be cool for it to be the Pokemon I've chosen to do that with. Also on the subject, can I just say I'm not very big on Sneasel's design, though I am actually a fan of the original Sneasel, and out of all the riding Pokemon, Sneasler feels the most like I actually just transform into this Pokemon, since the trainer is hidden in like a basket on its back. I do find the eyes that are peeking out pretty funny, but of all the new Hisuian form Pokemon that I get to feel like I'm actually walking around playing as the Pokemon themselves, we get Sneasler, and again, not my favorite design. Also, you can't use the rideable Pokemon in the village. It doesn't bug me too much, but I figured I'd mention it as I do think some people are a little bothered by that. I really love that you can take your Pokemon out of the Pokeballs at any time, and we get a look at your whole team together if you want. Great substitute for not having the Pokemon follow you in this game. It's pretty much the same thing. I can still get the Pokemon out of the Pokeballs. And I'm someone who 100% thinks having a Pokemon follow you is a really awesome idea, and I'm sad to ever see it go. I've loved that concept since it happened in Pokemon Yellow with Pikachu, but I fully understand it would be tough to do in this game as your character is traveling so much terrain, and having a follower Pokemon might get in the way of that somehow. So similar to what I suggested about the riding Pokemon, being able to choose among eligible ones that you've caught to choose as your riding Pokemon, it would be cool to just have certain eligible follower Pokemon, so they only have to animate some Pokemon that can follow you and not all of them can. Maybe just the ones that can like fit on your shoulder or something, and have them incorporated into the character, similar to just like changing the costume. That way it won't mess with running around in the environment, as the Pokemon will actually be part of the player character to some extent. Basically, I'm running thin on criticisms here, and now I'm just coming up with cool ideas for like DLC and sequels and stuff. Alright, so if I'm starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel for criticisms about this game, let's start to wrap this one up. The next criticism really isn't exactly a criticism of this game at all, even. In fact, it's rather more of a straight-up compliment. This is actually just a criticism of how the Pokemon game series itself has been handled recently. Number 9, Pokemon Legends Arceus should have been the first Switch Pokemon game. I saw how people were ready to jump on this game and complain about it the moment it was announced. I don't think I'd be hearing half as many complaints, especially about the graphics of Legends Arceus, if Sword and Shield hadn't paved the way for people to be extremely critical of a Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch and what it looks like. And that's pretty unfortunate because although the graphics aren't quite up to par, this game is actually pretty amazing. Much more amazing than what Sword and Shield was, which felt like, once again, the same style Pokemon game we've had for the past 25 years. I truly believe this has been the most fun I've had with Pokemon in many, many years. At least since the summer of 2016 when the Pokemon Go craze hit. And that wasn't so much because Pokemon Go was a very good game, but rather because everyone was playing it and interacting with each other, and it felt like the return of Pokemania, and that was cool to see happen. But this time, I'm actually having fun again with the game itself. I hope people who didn't like Sword and Shield don't pass on this because they feel burned by last time. Shockingly, it seems Game Freaks actually listened to the fans and created this game. While it could be better for sure, it truly is a really great game. I really can't recommend it enough despite having some flaws. It's just that much fun to play around and catch Pokemon. I know some of my more casual Pokemon fan friends have yet to buy this game, and it has somehow slipped under their radar. Those same friends I know ran right out and bought Sword and Shield because it was the first Pokemon game on Switch. While the sales for this game are supposedly doing really great right now, I hate to think that there's some people out there who are passing up on it either because of the complaints they're hearing about the graphics or because some casual fans out there might just not pay close enough attention to gaming all the time, and they might think, oh, okay, there's this new game, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Okay, it's a new Pokemon game on Switch. Probably going to be the same Pokemon experience I got with Sword and Shield, and I didn't really like that again, so I'm going to pass. Whereas if Legends Arceus had been the first Pokemon game to jump to the Switch, I think it would be even bigger and more well-received than it already has been. So hopefully word of mouth gets around and people give this game the chance it deserves. And now for my 10th and final criticism of Pokemon Legends Arceus. Number 10, the professor's lame hat. Okay, so it's a total nitpick, but the professor is kind of lame looking in this game because of his weird puffball hat. Yet despite him being the lamest looking professor in my opinion, he plays a way more major role than any past professor, since you constantly have to check in with him to do the research tasks and update the Pokedex. Just kind of unfortunate we didn't get somebody cooler looking. I guess I just think wearing a Pokemon pom-pom hat is just kind of stupid. Alright, well that's every criticism I can think of in my 90-something hours, almost 100 hours of gameplay with this game so far. Some of them were actually rather annoying stuff that I really think does need to be addressed. Some of them were a bit more of a reach and I'm just kind of nitpicking because I've played the game so much and I really want it to be the best experience it can be. Overall, I think the game is amazing, and I think it's a great starting point to move the Pokemon games in a really exciting, fresh direction. I hope people can look past the graphics and actually play the game. Instead of just taking a look at the game and complaining about the graphics, go ahead and actually try playing it. And find some other problems to complain about like I did, because once you actually try it out, you will find yourself playing the most fun Pokemon game in years. Might not be the best looking Pokemon game we could possibly ever get, but it will be the most fun you'll have in a long time, and I can't recommend it enough. I might do a follow-up video talking about what I love about this game instead of my criticisms of it, though I feel like I probably covered most of the things I like about the game already here, though I could go on and on and on. Maybe I'll just do it as like a free-flowing podcast discussion style video, just talk to someone and we'll just discuss how much we like this game and see what comes out of that conversation and put that up as a video. Anyway, how do you feel about Pokemon Legends Arceus? Are you like me and you think it's the best Pokemon game in years? Or do you not like that they've strayed away from the way the mainline games usually are? Do you think the graphics really hurt the game? Or do you think the gameplay is so much fun that the graphics don't really matter that much? What would you like to see in a sequel or as DLC? How would you fix up this game? And do you think any of my complaints are valid, or do you completely disagree with some of my complaints? Do you think they're more of nitpicks, or do you think some of them are valid complaints? Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Remember to like the video, leave a comment in the section below, and subscribe to PapaGenos!
Twitter, Patreon, Discord.